Okay, is it visible? Screen is visible? Yes or no? Whether screen is visible? Yes or no? Okay. Today we should go for the next heading, that is the environmental impact assessment. The unit number 6. The name suggests environmental impact assessment means what? When you're starting any project or any build, any structure or anything, uh, any construction activity or any industrial activity, in that case, the first step is what you need to be produce the environmental clearance certificate. That is the environment, what is the effect of that industry, what is the effect of that activity on the environment, on physical, chemical, biological characteristics of that environment. So you have to provide the certification, you have to provide the documentation. If I construct any building, then what will happen, or what is the effect of that environment, what is the effect of that industry on the environment, that has to be uh, given details at the beginning. And that effects, if under the limit, under the prescribed stage, then that particular project is going to be sanctioned or going to be given the particular certification that in project, and the further movement is going to be started. Now if you're dealing with the origin history and yeah, the 1960, the particular emergency of environmental studies, that is going to be considered the first formal system of EI established in the US following the National Environmental Pollution Act. Now see again, one of the things, the environmental pollution or environmental impact assessment procedure is vary from place to place, vary from industry, vary from uh, nation to nation. Every nation, for example, if you go for the American, their environmental impact assessment policy is different as compared to the our. So that modifications are expected as per the consideration, as per the availability, as per the local conditions observed. Because if you are applying the USA environmental impact assessment policies in India, whether it is feasible or not, that has to be checked. Because some rules are very strict, and if you following that rules strictly, then how the development of industry is going to take place? That is the big question. Means what? This is the balance. This is the balance between the industrial growth versus environmental protection. You need to be protect the environment, as well as you have to enhance the industrial growth also. If you putting the strict norms over the environmental policy, then it is difficult to survive for the industry. So it need to be make proper balance between the environment and the particular industrial growth, and that is going to be considered by the particular authority or particular board, or we can say particular government or particular policy makers, and making the rules and regulations in that. Sometimes they are providing strict provision. Sometimes if they are observed, the provisions are not that much needed. In that case, that provision may be diluted. Sometimes what will happen, if the heavy metal, for example, heavy metal parameter come into the picture right some years before that, heavy metals are not going to be considered, because little quantity of heavy metals also very creating the disaster effect on the environment, disaster effect on the human being everywhere. So such type of modification, such type of amendment has to be performed, has to be developed, has to be modified in that EI. So it needs to be considered. You have to provide the rules, implement the rules, or change the rule, or modify the rules. At the same time, sometimes you have to dilute the rules also. Why we are saying the dilute? Because sometimes what will happen, that rules are very difficult for industry to maintain, and that will definitely affecting on the overall progress or growth of industry, because our economy is based on the industrial growth. So the economy also has to be not to be disturbed. It should be remain a proper, a sustainable growth, or particular growth rate has to be maintained. So such dilution also expected as the time passes, as well as some modifications, some new things are going to be added into the particular EI, so that overall effect is going to be reduces, overall effect is going to minimize. Now, when you're dealing with the definition, environmental impact assessment is the basic tool to ascertain the positive, negative impact of project beforehand. Means before starting any project, what is the effect of that particular industry, as well positive as well as negative effect. That has to be prepared a document, and that has to be submitted to the authority, and that authority should give the certification to that whether you have to go for the production, whether you go for the construction or not. Suppose you have to construct the sugar industry. Before sugar industry, you need to prepare the plan. What is the production of that sugar industry? How much liquid waste is going to be generated? How much solid waste is going to be generated? How much air pollution is there? So that all analysis has to be done at the beginning by considering the how much production of that industry, and that report has to be submitted to the authority. Then authority see the check the whether that is feasible industry on that feasible site. Means if the site is there on that site, already site is going to polluted. Already suppose you are constructing a sugar industry center of the city, it is not feasible because already center of the city is accommodated with the large construction area, large activities are going to be there. So pollution is also there, air pollution is also there, vehicle pollution is also there. So in such case, if you install any industry, then it is not feasible. So that I'm saying, you have to consider the what is the actual condition of the environment at the beginning of the industry, and what is the condition of environment after the industry. Means if you after the construction of industry, what is the condition, and before the industry, what is the condition, that has to be analyzed at the beginning, and that has to be prepared the report according with that, and on that report the particular authority to decide whether the uh, environmental clearance certificate is issued or not. So that is the tools you need to be consider. Positive negative impact has to be mentioned in that EI. So objective is what, to analyze ill effects of the project on environment, then to suggest the remedial measures to minimize these effects. If any ill effects are there, if any hazardous effects are there, then how to reduce, how the provisions are made to reduce the effect. That also in the documentation part. To obtain the necessary clearance approval from the statutory bodies, selection of suitable site for the project. So these are the generalized objectives of BI. First thing is what, you need to be effect on the environment. Second, if you observe the effects are there, then what are the remedial measures we can consider, suggest, how to reduce that effect. That also is second. Second is what, obtain the necessary clearance approval from the particular body, state authority body. Okay, and after that, what is the exact site or suitable site for the construction of project. For example, sugar industry, where is the location of sugar industry, whether that sugar industry is nearby the farm area, or is it any the farm is particular sugarcane plantation is more in that area, so that is feasible. So it will reduce the transportation cost for the farmers, and all the other activities are going to perform easily. So need to be decide whether the site is suitable for that project or not. So these are the main objectives of the environmental impact assessment. Now, if you see the amendment in the of EI, see, if in 1994 government made it is mandatory, government made it is mandatory, made mandatory to obtain environmental clearance certificate. Environmental impact agency, or government government agent, government of India, or particular industry established, that is the impact agency is going to be established by the authority government, and the provision to impose the penalty or fine if they are in irregularly. Means what, the first thing is what, in the 1994 government implement that rule, that is the environmental clearance certificate is expected required, and for this they are establishing the environmental impact agency, and what that particular agency is going to be observe whether the rules are going to be followed or not. For example, in the EI impact assessment, if the particular industry is told, or if the industry mentioned, we are doing the particular provision for reduction of the pollutant, and actually on site, if they are not followed, if they are not maintained, that particular apparatus, for example, they are mentioning the electrostatic precipitator they are using to reduce the air pollutions or air pollutants. Okay, if the gas is, suppose the particular industry is there, in this from the industry, if the pollutants are emitted, and to remedial measures, already we see objectives. What remedial measures also we have to mention? In the remedial measures, they are suggesting we are going to be implementing the particular, particular this thing, particular particular equipment and pollution control equipment, that is the electrostatic precipitator, and they're mentioning on that basis, if the agency gives the clearance certificate to them, then afterwards, actually on the construction site, where it needs to be checked whether that instrument is implemented or not, or whether that instrument is applied or not, or whether that instrument is working or not. If that is not happen actually on the site, then there is provision to apply the heavy penalty to that industry. So that is also provision made. Second is what, after that, if you go in the further years, that is 1997, government introduced the public hearing. This is also one of the important aspects. In 1997, the government introduced the public hearing. Suppose if any um, industry is going to be located in the particular area, and which are the public, those people living in that area having the objection, so that public can be go to the court and put the file the case again, that that public hearing, or government introduce the public hearing, what are the provisions or what are the difficulties are going to be arises when the particular industry is going to be installed located in that area. So the public hearing also concern is going to be considered, and if the large opposition or large effects are going to be indicated by the public, then that project may be cancelled. For example, if you go for in Kokon area, that supposed to be installed the oil refinery, but the people living in that area having the tremendous opposition for that location of or construction of the particular oil refinery. What are the effect? Whether they're uh, because main source of the income is what, fishing, and if the fishing is going to affected, how they are going to survive, as well as what are the waste is going to produce from the oil refinery. Then what is the quality of that? What will happen about the quality of water? So that whole the seashore area going to be affected, disturb the ecology. So all these things need to be considered whether that's going to be implemented properly or not. In June 2002, government cleared many high-level investment projects without uh, environmental clearance certificate. So in 2002, some of the projects are important for the government, like the project for the defense purpose, project for nowadays, which is the corona epidemic. There in this corona epidemic, in that case, government can easily within hours they clear the project because without certificate, because that is having the higher priority. Because nowadays, if you see in the COVAX plant is supposed to be installed in the Pune, next plant, COVAX. Covaxin plant is supposed to be installed in the Pune. So whatever the land at clearance certifications there, that government can be sanctioned without EC, because that is the high level projects, and high level investment is also there. Okay, so such type of things are there. If the investment is very high, the priority level is very high, like your industry, like military purpose or like defense purpose, like your health purpose. So in that case, the government can give the relaxation for that. That amendment is made in the 2002 in this EI. Then go for the after the 2003, government introduced more studies, research, and inspection of the project for better assessment. Now in the 2003, government introduced more studies. Means what, the government involved the researchers for public studies or project student studies, or all these things are going to be introduced by the government to increase the effectiveness of that particular industry or more betterment, better analysis, or for better analysis government introduce more studies. If the particular study is going to be done by one person, then that same study is going to be performed by 10%. In that case, naturally, the 10 studies are available for single objective, single industry. In that case, the government has having more power or more easy to take the decisions. So the better assessment is going to be possible when the more data is available, more analysis is going to be available. On that, the better assessment can be possible. In August 2003, any project in highly polluted area or within 15-kilometer radius of a sensitive ecosystem or protected area like national park biosphere would require EC, and it comes in the wake of biodiversity. Means what? In the biodiversity act, that also be important aspect is going to be introduced. Under the biodiversity act, the particular animals are going to preserve, particular animals species are going to be protected, so that also consider the sensitive area, and according to that the norms of environmental clearance are going to be strict or minimized. So this way, the amendmental provisions are made in the EI uh, as the requirement of the society, as per the requirement of society, the particular amendment is going to be implemented. In short, what I am saying, some rules are going to be diluted, some rules are going to be implemented. The public hearing is going to be implemented. Diluted means what? High level investment or emergency purpose industrial project are going to be uh, diluted. There is no need of environment clearance. So such type of provisions are or amendments are made in the EA as per the uh, present condition of the present requirement of that particular society. So the aspect covered by EA, the present status of environment, what are the project activities you are supposed to follow, what are the adverse effect, pollution amendment, control technologies to be suggested, damage functions, and impact evaluation methodology. Now, these are some aspects which are supposed to consider in the present status of environment. What is the present status of that environment? What is the present environmental condition where the particular industry is going to be located? Then, what are the project activities we are supposed to perform under that? And because of that, what are the adverse effect produced on the environment? Because any development, if you perform, naturally it disturbs the environment if you go for any development. So here you need to be go for the development which sustainably develop, means what? There is not that much effect on the environment as well as on the industrial growth. So as well as you need to be provide some control technology. If the pollution is there, what control technology they suggested and how much implemented, that also be mentioned in that EI. If the damage is going to happen, what account of damage is there and how to overcome this damage, that is also going to be mentioned over there. Then evaluation methodology, impact evaluation, how the which methodology we are supposed to be implemented to find out the impact of that pollution on the environment. That evaluation methodology also mentioned in that EIA. This is the aspect covered by the EIA. So moving forward, then steps involved in EIA. The steps are such as visualize and isolate various units or processes or stages of the project and prepare the activity list. Visualize and isolate various units or processes or stages of project and prepare activity list. So naturally various stages are involved in the project, various units are there. If any industry is the sugar industry, in the sugar industry, if we say first part is what you have to cut the wash, properly remove, clean that sugar cane, then you have to cut that sugar cane into the pieces, then you have to crush that sugar cane and get the juice, and then after that juice you have to clarify the juice, and after the clarification of the juice you need to add some chemicals so that separation of that sugar molecules from that liquid base, and then afterward crystallization process is there. So different unit processes are involved in that industry, and that has to be mentioned in your EI. Identify environmental parameters affected by the different project activity. Means, for example, some one X project is there. In the A project is there, in the project A to Z activities are there. So every activity, what is the effect of particular activity on the environment? Okay, identify environmental parameters affected by the different project activity. So A to Z activities are there. Suppose if you perform the A activity, what will happen? If you perform B activity, what will happen on the environment? So that analysis is also expected in this EIA. Estimation of damage to the environment. So after that you need to be estimate how much damage is there, how much damage is possible due to the construction or due to the installation of that particular industry. That also be mentioned in this particular EIA. Modify the proposal and reduce the damage. If the damage is more, if the too much damage is there, in that case it needs to be modified processes. Means, for example, if you construct, if you want to make the sugar cane or sugar, in that case different unit processes are there. But if you observe after the construction of the industry, sugar industry, the damage on the environment is more. So in that case what will happen, we need to be modify some unit processes so that the pollution load is going to be reduced, so that pollution load is going to be reduced, so that modify, that modification is also expected. Then mention all hazards to the environmental clearly, to mention all hazards to environment clearly, and summarize and display the entire heterogeneous data systematically. Not whatever the data you are making, the data has to be presented systematically so that the particular authority can easily assess, easily understand, easily give the concluding remark. Because if the particular authority is not able to understand what is going to be happen in that industry, or if you're not presenting properly, so that particular authority cannot be justify with your suggestion or justify with your particular project. So you need to be summarize and display entire heterogeneous data systematically. These are some steps. These are the steps involved uh, in the particular EI. So origin history, that already discussed. The EI directives. The EI should identify, describe, assess, direct. So these are the words from that manuals. EI should be identify, describe, assess the direct and indirect effect of project on the following factors. Now direct and indirect effect is also there. Direct and indirect effect means what will happen on that soil condition, what will happen on that water condition, what will happen on the air. So indirect condition means what? We can say the job opportunity is going to be disturbed. Okay, so that is indirect effect of the project, or sometimes indirect effect positive also. The particular person, people living in that area get the jobs. So that is indirect effect also there. So direct and indirect effect also going to be analyzed after the uh, providing the report after the construction of that particular industry or project. EA should identify you. First identify you. Second describe. You need to describe the point. Then you need to assess the direct and indirect effect. Means what? Identify what is the problem, then describe the problem, then third one is what? Assess that problem, make the assessment, and that assessment is under two heads: direct and indirect. So under that, the following factors need to be considered, and that is naturally your vegetation, human beings, soil, water, climate and landscape, material asset, cultural heritage, the interaction between the above factors. So that is need to be considered under the heading of direct and indirect assessment, which consider the effect on the human being, effect on the vegetation, effect on the soil, water, air, climate, as well as culture heritage. If the particular area is famous for the particular culture heritage, in that case, if we construct any industry nearby that culture heritage, what will happen? So that has to be need to be justified. That has to be need to be assessed properly. And EI should therefore have the strong social dimension. Strong social means what? You have to consider the all the social aspects. What is the happening after the construction of the industry? So needs to be considered under the heading of EI directives. So in short, human beings and all things uh, need to be assessed here, direct indirect effect. If you see the particular steps, the first is what screening. Does the project required, is it need of the project? That is the first thing. Whether that it is essential the project, yes or no, that has to be first decided. Then scoping, what issue and impact should the EI addresses? What issues, what will happen, what are the problems produced, and what is the effect of that industry on that environment? That has to be addressed in the EI, that scope of that industry. Then baseline study, establish the environmental baseline study. You need to be do the study by considering some baseline datum on that. If you perform the study, and that study has to be considered for the further assessment. So the baseline studies need to be performed uh, before instead at the time of preparation of this EI report. Alternatives, consider the different approaches. If you after the baseline study, if you observe some of the elements are very dangerous for the environment, so then what is the alternative available? What are the alternative available to minimize the effect on the environment? That has to be considered. Then impact prediction. There is prediction models are available in the with the help of prediction model, we can forecast, we can predict if the industry is going to be located today, and what is the effect of that industry after some days on the environment. That prediction models also be studied. As per that, you need to take the decision. So impact prediction also needed. Then impact assessment, interpretation of the impacts. What is the impact on the human beings? What is the impact on the vegetation? What is the impact on the material? So all this impact has to be interpreted. Interpretation is expected when you deciding, when you considering the overall impact or impact assessment. After the impact assessment, if you go, then you have to go for the mitigation. Mitigation is what? If you see, make the treatment or make the suggestions if the impact is there. If the CO level decreases, so for example, SO2 level increases in that area after the construction of that industry, or particular solid waste is going to be generated, or particular volatile carbons are going to be increases in that area. So what are the mitigation techniques may be implemented? How to reduce that effect? So the mitigation techniques need to be studied after impact assessment. Means when you study the impact assessment, then you are supposed to understand what is going to happen there after the construction of that industry, and uh, so how to reduce that effect. So that in mitigation methods or remedial measures needs to be performed. So what can be done in negative impact, or that also be mitigations or remedial measures need to be considered. Then once you know all the things, then you can go for the EI preparation and review report or documentation. Once you start, once you know all the things, then now you start your documentation. Then public consultation means you not go for the general public hearing, or that we already know in the previous part. The if there any objection from that in the any particular agency or particular publics, so the public hearing also expected here. And then monitoring the impact of project. The last is what? Monitoring. Once the after the public hearing, if everything is going to be sanctioned, everything is accepted, then we can go for construction or implementing that industry in that area, and observe the impact or monitor the impact of that project, and whether they are followed or not. Because in the year report they are saying we are doing that one and that one, we are implementing that technology, implementing particular control equipment, but whether it is going to be actually implemented or not, that is also important aspect. So monitor impact of projects. So that is also important aspect consideration when you're dealing with the monitoring aspect. So that way, just